Hey guys, Justin here with AmericanMuscle.com, and today we're taking a closer look at and installing the Air-Raid MXP Series Cold Air with the Synthemax dry filter here, available for your 2015 through 2023 EcoBoost Mustang. Now you should be considering the Air-Raid for your EcoBoost if you're looking to replace your restrictive factory intake with an aftermarket unit equipped with such highlights like the sealed enclosure, reusable low maintenance dry filter to help increase your performance and your throttle response in your EcoBoost while also looking good under the hood at the same time. All right, let's get into our features here with the Air-Raid, guys. I always like to start off with pointing out just the quality construction at what I would consider to be a very fair price point. And not only that, but maybe one of the better fitting intakes in the category as well. Air-Raid is always on point. Again, from the engineered, American-made company. Always love pointing that out as well. Now, aside from that, again, big features when we're talking about aftermarket intakes, especially one like this, improvements in performance and throttle response should be expected. And that's thanks to the improved airflow overall. Now, on top of that, guys, increased throttle response, always something else to look forward to here, along with a minor increase in noise. Not as dramatic, of course, because we are dealing with the sealed enclosure. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But if you wanted a big bump in intake noise, going with an exposed filter, an open element filter is certainly going to be the better bet for you. But let's touch a little bit more about that sealed enclosure. I'm a really big fan of these, again, especially for owners out there looking to keep those intake air temperatures down and performance up. Now, a lot of times those open element filters, sure, they're gonna be delivering a little bit more noise, but they can be a little bit more susceptible to higher intake air temperatures, especially when the car sits idle for a long period of time. And that's when you start noticing performance dropping off or falling off. So with that, again, you're getting a quality sealed enclosure here with the intake, Air-Raid intake that is, and one that I have to admit does look pretty cool. You're giving kind of that polished, brushed metal look with the plexiglass. Certainly going to allow you to keep an eye on your filter cleanliness, but it's also going to look pretty cool every time you pop the hood as well. Now moving into construction, and kind of brushed on this a little bit earlier, but really solid construction throughout here, guys. Rotomolded plastic air tube here, as you can see, with the newer Air-Raid logo in place. Again, this is going to be great for preventing heat soak, that plastic design. And as you can see, the air box itself, also really nice molded design here. It does still retain the factory cold air inlet, which is going to be located right near the grill there, and that is a big plus as well. Now the filter, of course, with the Air-Raid, this is their Synthemax dry option, which will be a non-oiled synthetic filter, as the name implies, but it can still be clean, it can still be reused over time, and that's always a big thing to point out as well. Now, typically, yes, an oiled filter will slightly outflow a dry filter, but the drawback to those oiled filters, again, is that they do require some more maintenance at the end of the day, re-oiling. That can turn some owners off out there because there is a possibility of over-oiling the filter, and that can be a bit of a mess. But the dry filter, again, you kind of clean it off with some compressed air, and you're good to go. Now, I do also want to mention here, guys, that the metal combo with the plexiglass that we talked about earlier, certainly going to look great under the hood, of course, and as we mentioned earlier as well, it's going to allow you to keep an eye on the status of that filter. Now, under that filter, guys, Air-Raid does supply you with this velocity stack over here. That's going to help increase airflow, but again, it's not going to require any tuning at all. The system is completely plug and play. Install it right out of the box and go, and you're making some more power and improving the look under the hood. Finally, guys, kit is backed by a limited lifetime warranty, but I do also want to point out that this particular kit is not currently CARB certified at the time of this video. Moving into our price point segment here, guys, Air-Raid is gonna live right around that mid $400 ballpark figure, which is gonna be one of the more affordable sealed enclosure options on the site for the EcoBoost Mustangs, along with the intakes from Engine. Now, more expensive options that you'll find here on the site do include intakes from Roush and AFE, which will be roughly 50 to 100 bucks more or so than the Air-Raid kit that we're talking about here today. So definitely check around a little bit, kind of weigh your pros and cons of each system. But again, I'm really a big fan of the Air-Raid stuff, just from a quality standpoint, build standpoint, and just there's a lot to like here about the system itself. All right, guys, let's switch gears and get into our installation segment of the video. Site is gonna call this a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, taking about an hour, I would say at absolute most from start to finish, using some pretty basic hand tools. Yes, the fitment will be a little snug in parts. I don't think that's a bad thing. They are cramming a rather large airbox, filter, and tube into the same location as your factory components, so just keep that in mind during the install. But now we're gonna throw it out to the shop here for our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown. Check it out.
The tools you'll need for this project are a ratchet, an extension, a universal joint, a 7, an 8, and a 10mm socket, a pair of needle nose pliers, a 3/32 and a 5/32 Allen wrench, and some rubbing alcohol. Hi everyone. Today we're installing the cold air intake on our Mustang. But before we do, let's watch a short video on how to uninstall the stock system.
All right guys, first things first, we have to disconnect the negative cable on our battery just to keep things safe. What you're gonna do is remove your battery cover from your engine bay, set that aside, 10mm socket, loosen up the bolt, remove your negative cable on the battery. First step in uninstalling our factory airbox is to use a 7mm socket to loosen up band clamp. Holding on the factory airbox here, we're gonna disconnect our sensor, pop off a couple of clips on the airbox itself, and pull it off. Next step to remove our factory air filter is to grab your ratchet, small extension, and your 10mm socket and remove the bolt holding it to the firewall. All right, there's a couple of hoses we have to disconnect from the factory tubing leading back to the turbo. Now I'm gonna use needle nose pliers to disconnect some of the hose clamps. I can do some by hand with my thumb, which I'll show you in just a second. And then for the last clamp holding it to the turbo, you're gonna wanna have a decent extension, possibly a swivel socket to make your life easier, and then a 7mm socket for your last clamp. So what we're gonna do now, disconnect those hoses with the needle nose, and we'll work from there. All right, so we're gonna use our needle nose to disconnect the hose clamp on our air bypass valve hose. Go ahead and pinch that. If you are physically able, which I apparently am not. So here is this gray plastic PCV hose connect that you're gonna remove. You can pinch this back with your needle nose pliers, or you can reach your finger in there. It's a little hot. Push up on the connect and disconnect it from the hose. All right, we've got our extension on our ratchet, our 7mm at the end of a universal swivel joint. Gonna go ahead and loosen up the clamp at our turbo. All right, can rotate our clamp here and we'll be able to disconnect our hose from the turbo. And remove your factory hose from the engine bay.
All right, before we get to the actual install, there's a couple things we need to take care of first. On a new intake tube, we need to install the grommet and the connector for the PCV line. To do that, what you're gonna do is just grab the grommet, fit it into the hole next to the bypass hose connection, and get that installed, and just make sure that it seats properly all the way around. Next thing we're gonna do is grab our PCV fitting and slide it into place. Now, once we've got that done, we need to check our OEM airbox to see if this rubber grommet is attached to it. If it is, we need to pull that off, and we'll put this back in the car for the new airbox. Next thing we're gonna do is remove our air temperature sensor here. And to do that, we're just going to pull it back and twist it about a quarter of a turn, and then just wiggle it out once it unlocks. Now, once you've got your air temperature sensor removed, we're going to replace this O-ring that's already on there and replace it with one that comes in the kit. So we're just going to use our pick to lift that up out of the way, and then replace it with the new seal included in the kit. And you can just walk it around until it seals into place, like so. Once we've got that seal in, now we can go ahead and install it into our, so we'll just insert that into the new intake tube, work it in until it seats, and you'll notice that there's a little step on this mounting tab here, and that's where the locking tab on the intake sensor is going to sit. Once you've got your air temperature sensor in place, then we're going to use this washer and this small screw that's included in the kit to lock it down. So we'll just set that in place. There is a fitting already in the tube. And then we'll use a 3/32 Allen wrench to go ahead and tighten that down. Now, next thing we're going to do is install our small adapter coupler here onto the end of our intake tube. And we're going to use these two smaller clamps that are included in the kit. Now, you do want to make sure that the bolt head on these clamps are facing towards the outside of the vehicle when you put it on. So we'll go ahead and slip that on. Now, we're not going to tighten them down just yet. We'll wait until we get it on the car before we do that. Now we can go ahead and install our new air box. And this is where we're going to use the grommet that we took off of the old air box. We're just going to place that back into place on the vehicle next to the bolt that held the air box down. Now we can go ahead and set our air box in place and get it secured to the vehicle. We'll slide that down in, making sure, of course, that the front edge of the air box goes into the fitting in the grill. And the little stud fits in the grommet here. And then we'll reuse the original bolt that held down the air box to hold down the new box. And we'll tighten that down with our 10mm socket. Now we're going to go ahead and install our air filter adapter here on the inside of the air box, and we're going to secure it with these 3 button head bolts and flat washers included in the kit. So you're just going to line up the holes, insert the screws, get the screws started. And then finally, we'll do the one at the bottom. All right, then we'll use our 5/32 Allen wrench to tighten them all down. Now we can go ahead and install our air filter with the clamp. Get it seated over the adapter that we previously installed. And then tighten it down with our 8mm socket. Now we can install our last coupler onto the air filter adapter with the clamps. And we're going to leave them loose for right now until we get everything installed. Now we can go ahead and set our intake tube in place. and get it connected up to our turbo. And now we'll slide the coupler over the end of the turbo. All right, now once we've got it started on the turbo end, we can come back up top and go ahead and fit the larger end into the air box. And then we can make sure that everything is in place. Now we can go ahead and tighten down our clamps. So we'll start at the top. Using our 8mm socket, we'll go ahead and tighten down these clamps. All right, now it's a little tough to get the camera in here with all these other hoses and tubes going on, but the other two clamps that we need to tighten up are the ones that connect us to the turbo. So we'll go ahead and get our ratchet in there with our 8mm socket, and we'll tighten those up. Now we can go ahead and connect our bypass hose and our PCV line. So we'll get our pliers to compress the spring. Insert it over the fitting. Now we'll install our PCV line. Make sure that it snaps into place. Now we can go ahead and reconnect our air temperature sensor. All right, so our next step is going to be to remove the protective film that covers both sides of the window here. So you can just peel that off from both sides. And then we'll lay it in place. And next thing is to remove the protective film off of the metal covering. And now we can lay that in place. Now we can attach the bolts using a 5/32 Allen wrench to hold it in place. All right, and finally, we can install our Air Raid emblem right here on the intake tube. It's always a good idea to wipe it down with some alcohol first, just to make sure that it's clean. Let that dry for a couple of minutes. Now you can peel the front side off of the protective film, and then peel the backing off of the emblem. And then go ahead and place it onto the intake tube. Give it some nice firm pressure and help it stick. And your installation is now complete. And that wraps up our review and install of the Air Raid MXP Series cold air intake with yellow Synthemax dry filter for your 15 to 23 Mustang EcoBoost. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Mustang, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.